Good morning. This is Glenn Greenwich and Mr. Mr.
Tom Pope.
Pope, Mr. Tom Pope. We're welcoming you to the show today, and what we want to talk about,
And of course, the show is Community and Social Change Radio.
Community and Social Change Radio, and as it pertains to that, we actually want to talk a little bit about journalism. What truly is the role of journalism in this day and age, and how does it impact communities? What are your thoughts, Tom?
Well, I think we're not seeing both sides of a story, regardless of the story. The recent post that I put up on our Facebook page is just one example. How can NBC one night decide to devote a time slot for Amazon's effort to clean up certain buildings and then move on to another topic? How can you ignore the other news from Amazon in the same week, where a worker is fired because he wants better cleanup procedures? We're not seeing both sides of the story.
And why do you think that that's so important for the news media to have both sides of the story?
Well, I think it was Jefferson who said that it was the only way democracy could last is if people were informed. And the only way we can be informed is by seeing both sides of a particular story. But to treat this in such a way where both sides are only showing one side, then I think we're really confusing the public. The public doesn't have the option to really research things in depth. They're working 9 to 5 or longer, many longer, and they're exhausted when they come home. So how can we put on a channel of Fox or ABC and find out accurate information? We have to rely on the journalists to provide two different sides of a key issue.
Well, I find it interesting that in this day and age, the people who are actually, let's say, for example, the evening news, it seems to me, now I'm not a reporter, I'm not in the scene, but just it seems to me that the broadcasters are not doing their own research. So they're relying on researchers, and are they just putting out the view of the newspaper, or that particular broadcasting channel, rather than the both sides of the news?
Well, I think many times they're being directed also by advertising dollars.
Right. Okay. Because now that's something that has always bothered me, the fact that the news is now its own cost center. Before, that was just it was a part of the paper. They did the research, they did whatever, and they were somewhat independent. I grew up in the era of Walter Cronkite. In his era, he checked the information because it was his reputation on the line. It doesn't seem like that's still happening.
Well, this changed with the disruption of the fairness doctrine. In the past, we had a solid wall between advertising and journalism. When Reagan became president, he broke that wall down so that the news became a vital part of dollar generation. So that has led to what we're talking about.
So basically what you're saying is that the sensationalism of the news became more popular than the story.
Sure, that's one aspect.
Yeah.
But it's also how do we want to give information? This article in the Queen's Chronicle, helping business continue to prepare. Queen's Chamber links U.S. House members with small business community. Now, I'm looking through the entire article to see where is the meat in the story. And way down at the bottom, well, yes, I do see that we have a getting together of, we have, let's see, Hakeem Jeffries from Brooklyn, Queens, Carolyn Maloney, Gregory Meeks, Grace Ming, Tom Swazi, and I'm dying to find out, well, okay, what is being proposed? And we have no information exactly about what's being proposed. I see one paragraph: if your restaurant is delivering and you want to be listed, or if you're changing your hours, even if you're not a member of the chamber, contact us at, well, fine. This gives some information about where to contact, but what is happening with this group of congressional people? What is the chamber looking for? What do the members, the House members, or the politicians, what are they looking for? Nothing in this article addresses that.
And by not addressing that, you basically are leaving out. It's kind of like you've piqued my interest, but then you didn't give me the satisfaction of the information.
Right.
Now, is it because the information is changing so quickly and they don't want to put out bad information, or what do you what do you think is going on here?
Well, then the journalist really has the obligation with that scenario to mention that as of now, X is the information, although X could change, and that could change because of B and C.
Right.
This is how we address a situation like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what as a educated reader, what do you recommend in dissecting these stories and going through these stories? You know, knowing that it has become, well, let me put it this way. So to me, it seems like it's more of a spin. What are you going to spin on this issue versus giving me both sides of the information and let me choose? Given that, as a reader, what do you recommend how readers take the information?
Well, I think we have to ask ourselves a series of questions. One is, what is the agenda of the different people involved? Is their agenda different depending on whichever group they're talking to? Who is backing their agenda, their proposal? How is this actually helping the community? What do the community, local people feel about the various agendas? What major change has prompted whatever topic we're talking about? Why did that change occur? Was something like the agendas mentioned, were they argued by people in the past? a whole series of questions would then give you further information.
So would it be accurate to say that the five H's are not being, is it five H's? The
5 Ws.
five W's. Thank you. Are the five W's not being utilized in the reporting?
When they are being utilized, they're not gone into depth, or we're not going beyond that. The 5 Ws, who, what, where, when, why, we can actually highlight that by asking the key question. If we answer all of those, what is the big change element that makes things different today from yesterday or from last week? So look, we have to look at the change and wonder about that.
Very good. Anything else that you want to speak to
Well,
inside of
what
this subject?
are your thoughts about the process?
Well, I'm having to read much more to be informed. I think that you still have your grand newspapers like the Times that seems to be doing a little bit more thorough job than some of the other newspapers, because their quote unquote clientele are demanding a little bit more fat on the bone, meat on the bone, in their reporting and their articles. Outside of them, I'm a little tentative about the information because I'm not sure, do they have an agenda? Is this consistent with their agenda? Is this outside of their agenda? Without both sides of the information being portrayed in the one article, that has me then have to look and be a little bit more challenged to find out what the truth is, rather than what I perceive as the spin of one administration or one newspaper versus the other. And quite frankly, it comes from the top. When you look at the administration in Washington, and they rely on spins rather than facts at this point in time, and they would rather spin something than talk about the facts and what really is the issue. So I'm relying less and less on media for information. I'm doing my own research. I'm listening to different stations. For example, BBC. There's another one. I can't think of. There's another one.
Al Jazeera,
Al
France
Jazeera. Yes, thank you. Al Jazeera.
24.
Yeah, that I find to be a little bit more demonstrative of objective journalism, bringing both sides of the conversation.
When sources are introduced in a story, we also have to look at who are the sources. Years ago, the TV journalistic show Meet the Press had many different voices. The past maybe decade or so, you can actually reframe that show and we could call it Meet the Republicans. So we flood the fields with people of like mind. So it seems like anything that is in the center is extremist left.
Yeah.
So we have to be aware of the sources. And at the same time, we can't give voice to the far extreme. We have enough indecision so that key people would be talking about how best to save the world in terms of the ecological problems. To have that put as a very minimal part of the conversation, because we have to include the other side, which says, no, there is no global warming. I think that's a false way of looking at things, because we're dealing with a very extremist point of view that says there is no global warming. We have too many issues to discuss about global warming to look at and disagree with the procedure. Why get lost with this one sector of our society that they would probably argue that the world is flat?
Well, I think that's part of the conversations for community. And one of the things that I'm noticing and realizing inside of this coronavirus, for example, that young people don't listen to the news. I've been on a couple of calls and conference calls and Zoom calls and so forth. And what I'm hearing is, and from my friends as well who have children, a lot of the young people aren't listening, and they're not, and they don't understand because they haven't been listening to the news, and haven't been following and tracking it. And it's like one guy said, "Oh, how I found out about it was my auntie told me what was going on." Now, this is a guy looked like he was in his 20s or 30s, maybe even mid 30s, but doesn't look at the news. Now, I think that part of it is that the news has been, in one direction or another and not necessarily showing both sides. So I think the young folks have just forget about it. I'm not going to listen to any side, and become uninformed about some of the issues that are occurring. And that's a problem. That's problematic as well. I mean, you go from not listening to anything versus listening to things that are biased and not objective. So you've got, so you're kind of caught in the middle. And where do we go from here, Tom? Well, how do we begin to even wrap our arms around this?
Well, it's almost like we need a whole new perspective, and that requires political change to put back in place the fairness doctrine to create this wall. We also need to look at how to take the dollar away from certain parts of our society. The dollar has no place in healthcare if healthcare is a right for everyone. The dollar has no place in news dissemination. This is something that should be open to the public. So we have to look at why are we focused so much on the value of the dollar when that could be taken away from our way of life?
Interesting. Well, as usual, we always have a gritty conversation. Out there, we look forward to your comments. We're here to stimulate conversation, and hopefully you've gotten something out of this session today. And we look forward to your comments, and look forward to working with you in the future. Anything else before you go, Tom?
I think you said it all.
All right. Thank you.